My name's Koray, Camgöz. I'm the PRCA's Director of Communications and Marketing, and welcome to this event from our Race and Ethnicity Equity Board, otherwise known as REEB. So REEB has been in existence for 1 year now, and as we come to our 1 year anniversary, we wanted to take this opportunity to look back at the year that's been, talk about what's gone well, as well as explore some of the challenges that we still face and the solutions to those challenges. So I'm really pleased to be joined by the Race and Ethnicity Equity Board, headed up by our chair, Barbara Phillips. So with that in mind, Barbara, I will kick off with you, if I may. How would you assess this first year for REEB? How's it gone from your perspective?
Well, I'm enormously proud of everything that we've achieved, because having sat on, as many people on the board have sat on other boards, and there's been a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And I'm really proud that we galvanized ourselves, because, you know, we all have jobs and things to do, and really made stuff happen. And I think the things that which we'll come to later, things that we've made happen have had an actual impact. I mean, I've had physical feedback, so I'm really proud of that, as especially, you know, delighted to chair a board that is on the same wavelength as I am, and action oriented, and really wants to see change. And then I'm delighted to have made 12, 13 new friends. So that's an added bonus that on the board, that we are friends and we support each other. And that's, as a woman, of a mature woman, it's really lovely to make new friends later on in life, if you like. So I'm really delighted about that. So those are the two kind of overall things, and then we'll get to all the juice.
Thank you. And just thinking, and with the others, feel free to chip in here. What do you think are, looking back at our terms of reference and the goals that REEB set out to achieve at the beginning of the year, can you put out any examples of where that's gone well, or what in particular you've been most proud of?
I could go. So
Sure.
I think the brilliant thing was, like Barbara mentioned, I agree with everything she said. You know, so the board is made up of a fantastic group of people who bring so much experience, and also their, you know, insights from working in different sectors, and, you know, being, some of us are independent, some of us have small consultancies, and we bring a whole host of experience into this. But the good thing about REEB was that under the chairship of Barbara, we've set out the terms of reference, and I think that is very, very critical for setting a good foundation, because if you have specific terms of reference, then you're working as per them, and we are accountable to the terms of reference, and I think that's brilliant. And because of that accountability, and, you know, the position that REEB occupies at the PRCA, you know, we've seen the changes within the PRCA board, and we've also seen you know, all the work that we've done on everything. I think it's brilliant that we are able to map our progress against what we've set out to achieve. So I won't take up all the time.
I would just echo that as well, because I think, you know, when we came together, we bonded out of, you know, moments that we all shared at certain points in our career. And it was so wonderful to have a group of people that we could talk to about our experiences, but also obviously give everyone else a platform to come to us and share those experiences. And I think one of the key things that REEB has actually achieved is set out an institutional framework that ensures that it's going to sustain, because I could get hit by a bus, you know, anything could happen to anyone on this board. But the point is, I have full confidence that this is going to be a long-term initiative. You know, this is just episode 1 of the Netflix series of REEB. We're going to have a lot more episodes, which are going to be a lot more exciting.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and let's hope that you don't have any incidents with a bus, Anushka. But I agree with you; it's definitely cemented into the formation of the PRCA, and the fact that whoever is chair of REEB will sit on the board and will help hold the board account for everything that we've set out really signals the intent that we're about. Did anyone else have any thoughts on kind of how the year's gone, and looking at what they're most proud that REEB's achieved in the first 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll kick off, I guess. So I would echo everything that my colleagues have said. I'd say a big thing for me is how much I'm actually learning as well at the same time, particularly the work that we've done with the ethnicity pay gap. You know, there were some real light bulb moments there for me. And the bit that I'm really proud of is the work that we are doing on mentoring. Now, I have mentored for many, many years, and I've helped launch many mentoring schemes, but this one in particular, I think, is a little bit different. And, you know, when running the training a few weeks ago, it's so great to hear how people do get value from it, and how, you know, real individuals' lives are kind of being transformed by having conversations with that, like sympathetic ears and people that can help mentor them along the way. And that particularly is something that I'm really proud of.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Yeah, I think the ethnicity pay gap was the first real commitment that REEB identified, and I think the group can be really proud of the guide, that not only the guide that was put out, but also the training and the events that went alongside that guide. And I still think we're kind of very much in the early stages as an industry of getting to grips with the issue, but yeah, I think REEB can be very proud of the work that it's done on that issue. Did anyone else have any initial thoughts on this year?
I just want to.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Jo.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate some of the points that people have made around being really intentional, and those who have come onto this board and, you know, helped launch the board. I think that was really the fact that immediately after REEB was launched, the wider PRCA board then appointed more people of BAME heritage, or the first people of BAME heritage, kind of onto the wider PRCA board. And I think for me, that was already indicative of the fact that, you know, this was a group of people that were have set out to change, and not just talk, kind of like Barbara's just kind of alluded to. But yeah, that was definitely, if I think back to my very early on reflections, that was one of the first moments where I was like, okay, REEB. So there's a little comment from me.
Yeah, I remember seeing your message on Instagram when you first put out that we're thinking of setting this up, and I was quite cynical, and you got in touch with me.
You weren't the only one.
Yeah, and just said, you know, if you've got something to say, then say it. And I think that the fact that we've managed to do this in a pandemic, managed to keep in touch with each other, and many of us are from different parts of the world. Yeah. I think it's brilliant. And before this, it was really easy to feel, oh, I'm the only one. Oh, I feel this way. I've got these opinions. I've got nowhere to share them. And also, it's not even just about sharing them. It's about actually doing something. Yeah. So this group has made me feel as if we can actually do some real, you know, make some real change and do some real good across the industry, not just for young people, because a lot of them are for mentoring and sort of undergraduates, apprentices, but it's for everybody, you know, people that have been in the industry for years. We need to learn things, you know, we need to be part of the process too. So yeah, I think we're, you know, I can't wait to see what happens next year.
Absolutely. And can I just kind of round off? So I think if you all remember our very first get together before we had formed the board, we all got together and we were all kind of, you know, telling our stories. And I do remember, I remember Michael actually came back to me, and, you know, I had a comment. I had like, yeah, I hope this is not going to be just a talking shot or something. I said something off the cuff, as I do, to Paul PRCA. And, you know, and here we are as a standing committee. But I remember there was another thing that I really, you know, which I think has come to fruition, which is great already in 12 months, is I remember we all promised ourselves, we all committed to that this is going to be uncomfortable conversations. And I remember us all hammering on about accountability, that, you know, whoever is faced with a change, whoever we deal with in the industry, obviously, maybe in our own organizations, if it was safe, you know, we wanted people to be held accountable. And I have to say, lots of agencies. I mean, you know, from all the talks Koray had with all the board, I worked my way around the board literally and told everybody, you need to speak to me at least once. And, you know, as I worked my way through all the agencies, that a lot of them had that aha moment in like, wow, yeah, nowhere to hide. I think we need to do something. And I think, again, we can be proud that we said they're going to have to be uncomfortable and they're going to have to be held accountable. And I think our stance isn't too, you know, it's not too hardcore, but it's fairly firm in that we're not to be, you know, chided one way or the other. We're going to keep pushing through with those goals in terms of reference.
Thanks for that, Barbara. And I think I'd echo all the points that everyone's made so far, particularly the one Raj made about the fact that this has come to be in such a weird time for society and for business, and so it's encouraging to see the start. But it is just that, it's just the start, it's just the first step. And so one thing I'd be quite interested to get the board's thoughts on is how the industry as a whole has performed when it comes to racial and ethnic diversity over the past 12 months. So, of course, there was kind of a renewed enthusiasm a year ago, and you know, there were lots of initiatives and lots of commitments made, but I'm interested to get everyone's views on how it's been and how that you'd all assess the progress, if any, so far.
So my own personal view, well, who else's view would I have, I guess, is that, you know, some of us have been banging this drum for a number of years. And so what it is great to see is that people are finally listening. So that is positive. And, you know, my observation is people have got a real desire to do something, although, you know, less sure about kind of what action to put in place other than the obvious that are making a difference. My other observation would be that it's the same people that are really kind of driving a lot of the actions. So in an ideal world, something like REEB wouldn't need to exist. And so, you know, there are kind of evangelists like us, there's other people kind of doing some really great work, but it does tend to be the volunteers and the informal networks that are really putting in the miles. But you know, I think it's positive that people want to do stuff, but I'd, you know, just encourage them to really kind of do like a little bit more thinking rather than kind of coming to people like us for the answers all the time.
Very true.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Anne-Marie. And I think one of the challenges that the industry has faced is how do we go about sustaining that enthusiasm and momentum that was generated. And I think your point about the same old people driving the conversations is really pertinent. So yeah, very interested to hear from the others as to how you think we can kind of keep up this momentum and ensure that the words do translate into action. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
So I think just on this question on progress in the industry. So in the last year, we've seen that, you know, Barbara mentioned the aha moment. It shouldn't have required, you know, all those things to have that aha moment, but a lot of the leaders have had that aha moment, and they are trying to respond, you know, to these huge seismic changes in society and to the needs of, you know, huge societal conflicts and what is happening outside, and to reflect and be representative. But it's often, like Anne-Marie mentioned, it's, you know, a few people who are sort of, a lot of the volunteers, of course, and individuals who are leading on great initiatives, some of the bigger agencies, and a lot of people are talking. There's representations on speaker panels and in videos and in the media, et cetera, But the big concern is that real action is perhaps not taking place as quickly as it can take place. Yeah. We know this is not a sprint; it is a marathon, and it's you know, work in progress. But still, I think the industry has not done as much as it could. They're spending a lot of time talking, and talking is good, but at some point you have to stop talking and start taking action. And there's not too much that we are asking for. These are simple things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to that point, I think in terms of action versus talking. I think I would, to kind of call out people who say that, you know, diversity is a real priority for us, et cetera, if it was, you know, if they truly believed and felt the impact that it would have on their bottom line, in the same way as, you know, we're going to have to make redundancies, we're going to have to do X, we're going to have to do Y. I think in those kind of crisis situations, that's when you really see people take action. That's when you really see what their priorities are. And if diversity is on the same level, if it's an absolute #1 priority, then I would say we would have seen like this industry turn around. You know, I'll await to see the next census to see what change has been made before commenting. But for me, the change that I can see is within the communities who are affected, and the discussions, as everyone here has kind of commented on, and the more being more open to using the word Black and using the word race rather than diversity. So I think those are some of the changes, but whether that has a long-term effect, you know, that remains to be seen, if I'm speaking very frankly.
No, absolutely. And I would agree from some of those conversations whereby there's been an interesting scenario where, I had the pleasure of speaking to lots of heads of agencies, just who were my fellow board members on PRCA. And they were all, you know, it's a similar scenario. They were like, rah, rah, let's go. You know, we spoke about, I only speak in strategic terms, strategy, operating models, you know, culture, etc., psychological safety, you know, speaking those terms so that it's their kind of language. But it's interesting, as is with everything, I don't want to malign middle managers, but as soon as you go a couple of levels down, the block is still there. There's still a blockage. And sorry, HR, you know, practitioners, but you know, a lot of it is coming from HR still, that they're not quite sure, I'm not going to recommend this because I don't know what it means, which is fine. But then, you know, we are here to help explore what that might mean for you, and then they're not doing that either. So I think you're right, Joe, the penny has dropped and they know they should be doing something. And this reminds me, without talking too much, this reminds me, remember when we met originally again, we said one of the things that not only would it be uncomfortable, and not only would we want them to be held accountable, but you know, we were going to stay steadfast on our path, and we were going to get lots of people who just don't want the change. And I know I remember particularly talking about desire. You know, I always go on about, let's not forget, anything people want kind of happens. So let's remember, it hasn't changed yet because they really don't. That, to me, the core is because people aren't ready to say, yeah, I really want this to happen. But, you know, we're here and we're going to work our way through it.
And just to follow up again on that point about leadership versus middle managers or whoever, you know, I mentor people who are more junior than me. So I talk to people who are really at the junior entry level position way more than I talk to leaders. The only time I talk to leaders is when I'm sitting on a panel with them or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the lack of unison between what a leader is saying and what I hear from usually black women at a very junior entry level is it's a vast kind of a difference there. And so for me, yes, people talk in strategy and they talk about culture, but do you ever do you survey your junior people? Do you tour your offices in different regions? That's when you'll start to, if we want to have change and just not talk about it, do you actually know your people and the people that you're trying to target? Because culture isn't just about increasing numbers, it's about how people feel. And frankly, the only change, as I've just said, and again, I'll be repeating myself as well, but I feel like a lot of change feels like people feel as though it's come within the community. And when I talk to junior people, it's, wow, I didn't know there were so many of us. And it's been so great to find mentors who look like me. Not really about, oh, it's really changed in my company. Yeah. Again, when I come back to it remains to be seen, we're also talking about things within a bubble that is lockdown and COVID and remote working. So unfortunately, we might even see not just a return to a lot of the behaviors previously, but it might be even worse now that people have been home for a long time. Being at home given a lot of protection to people whose hair is touched or who have strange microaggressions regularly. So I can give anecdotal feedback, but it really remains to be seen how the industry and whether the industry has changed.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for the industry to implement change or say it's going to change when it's the talk. So when we're talking about race, we're talking about ethnicity, it's on the national and global agenda. My concern is when that conversation stops and something else takes control of the media, what happens then? Because that is the real test. It's about doing it when no one's watching. Yeah. So it's a real sort of integrated, it's sort of in the blood of the company. Yeah. And so far I've witnessed this, and I've heard from other people where, yeah, all as you've all said it, the words are there, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but actually kind of really meaning it rather than just saying it because you think that's what people want to hear. That I'm still waiting.
I think there's also, I mean, as obviously we are keen for change to happen, but I also think that there's a recognition that this is a marathon, not a sprint, because we're actually trying to make systemic changes, and these systems have been in place, you know, based on hundreds of years, and that is a challenge, but you know, we're taking it on, and I'm a firm optimist. I do believe that change is happening, and it might just be that at this point all we have is awareness and the desire, but it will progress, and we'll see what, you know, form or shape that will take. But you know, one of the most fun points for me while helping REEB is the time I actually managed to come up with the name Prism. So I was like, oh my God, Anushka, you actually did something that was useful. Because I remember we were all sort of back there, oh, what's going to be called? And you know, when I started, and because I started in financial PR, I didn't have anyone else in my industry who looked like me or who had my background. And I'm so happy that we have this mentorship scheme, because I know so many people who desperately need it. And change starts with the young, right? Gosh, I feel old when I say that, but that is, you know, that it's going to take time, but it will happen.
I mean, Anne-Marie, you are kind of resident PRISM expert. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on PRISM for us?
Yeah, so PRISM is our mentoring program, and I was like quite astounded, really. So bearing in mind that mentoring isn't something new, when we did the call for mentors, how many people came forward and were willing to give up their free time to kind of mentor kind of early careers, or anyone really that feels that they need that mentoring. So that's something I'm kind of really proud of. But you know, it's open to anyone. We've asked people kind of, you know, just to have a think about what areas they specifically need help on. So it could be, you know, I'm looking for my next promotion, or I want to understand how to progress somewhere where I'm, you know, visible physically, but, you know, not necessarily visible from a kind of leadership point of view. And, you know, I'm looking forward to, once it's been going for 6 months, to kind of really kind of writing up some of the findings, because I think we'll find it quite illustrating. So yeah, again, it's something I'm really proud of.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. And yeah, thank you, Anushka, as well, for the conceiving the name, which we ought to say stands for public relations, inclusion, support and mentoring. There we go.
That's why we use PRISM, because no one's going to remember.
And just on that, it's a weird one, but I feel the same way about, like, when I came up with REEB as the what the acronym actually stands for. So often I feel like in rooms or in boards or in places where, you know, we're not necessarily welcome, or we don't necessarily, our voices aren't always heard. That moment, that last summer, when we were trying to come up with a name, and the other people in the room just went, oh, that was again to me like just an example of what it might feel like to be working with people who just listen to what you have to say, rather than, right? And it's crazy that small things like that, and this is why I think it's so important for really junior people to have these communities, because those kind of experiences will build your confidence, rather than when you, I'm so sorry, work is pinging, it's my work laptop is pinging, let's cut that bit out. But if you're surrounded by a supportive community in your place of work, you'll have confidence to speak up more than once and come up with these ideas, because there must be so many ideas that go unheard because of who's saying them. Yeah. But not to end it on a negative note when we just went in a really positive vibe, but I loved that. That was, for me, I completely forgot about it until Anushka just said that, but actually that was a really great moment for me last summer.
And you know, that reminds me of and brings us back to our goals, because when we sat around and we ploughed through what we wanted, and you know, I think we were quite smart in not trying to boil the ocean, you know, and we honed it down. If left to me, it would have been everything, every aspect. But, you know, we've come up with a set of really, I think, achievable goals, and I carry those with me everywhere I go. And you know, when people ask what we do and what we're about, and you know, and what can you do and what can we do, and every, you know, agency that I've spoken with, and thank you agencies that are, you know, giving up your time to talk with us, it's been about the goals. It's been about psychological safety and representation, and you know, putting people in the pipeline and getting rid of this idea that there's a talent pipeline, you know, an issue with. That's just nonsense, and you know, I just can't listen to that. So you know, there's lots of things we have on our goals, and if people really do want to get involved, and they're still, you know, we spoke earlier about people maybe not knowing what to do, you know, engaging with us. And we've been quite open that you can engage with us, and we have terms of reference and we have goals, you know, and it's there in a format that's really accessible.
I think there's strength in numbers, and that's what we have.
Yeah.
And with the mentoring, I have unofficially benefited from mentoring actually from this group. And I think it's really important to experience that. If you're going to mentor, you've got to experience what it's like to be mentored. And it's that whole thing about, it's not just having your experience or living your experience, but it's kind of then thinking, well, I'm part of a group, so I've got to be a role model. So therefore, kind of what can I do and how can I handle my experience so that I can teach what I've learned to other people. And I've said it before, we're all, you know, we should all be learning. It doesn't matter if you've started, you know, at the start of your career, or if you've been there for 10, 20, 30 years, it doesn't matter. We've got to be open to learning. And I think that this group is really good at that. And I think I'm learning all the time from everybody.
Yeah, and it's been great to see people get new jobs. So, you know, there's a couple of people that aren't here today. So, you know, Cedric in the US has got a new job, for example. I think you got a new job as well, didn't you, Joe, over the last year as well, just to see kind of how we're all growing as well as kind of helping the industry.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say education and community is the heart of what we're trying to achieve, not just with the board, but in everything that REEB set out to do. I'm conscious of time, so I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on the year ahead, and it'd be interesting to have or hear a few views and perspectives on what we feel the next 12 months will look like, not necessarily in terms of output, but what we consider to be successful in a year's time. Did anyone like to take that? Barbara, can I ask you to share your thoughts on that?
You know me, I'm never short of a couple of words. So the next 12 months, I say it's more of the same. I mean, we were blessed, well, not blessed, I suppose. I'd say that PRCA were quite astute in making us a standing committee. So we are here forever. And as you know, we discussed earlier, we're not going anywhere, which is fantastic. But I'd say it's more of the same. And as we've just started to explore, it's like a huge onion, isn't it? And we've just started to peel off, you know, the first layer, and that's kind of awareness. And as we were talking, I was thinking back, you know, to the dark ages when I used to live by those change models. You know, it's awareness, understanding, commitment. You know, there'll be like an arrow pointing, and you know, at the end, it's like do what the organization says you needed to do. But I'm thinking we're literally at the awareness phase, but we are kind of awareness stroke commitment as well. And I'd say, without, you know, specifics, we absolutely have to start getting more commitment from the industry. And, you know, we are all about demonstrable commitment, because, you know, verbal commitment is all very lovely, but we want demonstrable commitment. So I'd say for us, you know, whether new endeavors, new challenges, say we're enormously proud of the ethnicity pay gap work that will last forever. Everywhere I've gone, I've mentioned it. And, you know, people out of the industry, in all industries, can take that, which is what we had intended, that it's available for anybody in any sector. So that, and then obviously PRISM will, you know, go from strength to strength. So I'd say more of the same, but let's get off to the next layer down, which is more about commitment, and let's see what that commitment looks like.
Yeah, I think so REEB has set out its stall, and I think our two biggest initiatives are the ethnicity pay gap and the mentoring scheme. And we've set out everything and we're working on it. It would be great to see the impact. Like Joe mentioned earlier, it would be great to see what comes out of it. At the end of a year, Anne-Marie also mentioned it. And on the ethnicity pay gap, we need to see how many of the agencies are actually taking it up or doing something about it. Some agencies are individual on their own, doing a lot of work around this, but it's not everyone. I think some people feel it's not for them because they're not a certain size or something. So I think we need to see in the next stage success for REEB would be more on how much uptake we've seen and what the impact of the mentoring scheme has been. But one thing that I'd also like REEB to be involved in, the reason why I joined REEB was because of my experience, and that's I didn't have anyone as a leader. I was leading an agency, and then in the UK I was not leading an agency, and that's because there were no leaders like me, and I'd like to see more people from different ethnicities and backgrounds in leadership positions, and for us to start asking agencies to actually make some changes, because we've seen in the last year, I mean, there's so many initiatives which are showcasing talent from Black and other ethnic communities. It's not a lack of talent, it is a lack of opportunity. It is a lack of, it is a lack of foresight on the agencies or organizations' part, where they don't see these people as either heading agencies or in the C-suite or at the board level. Yeah. So I think I would be very interested in seeing something on that part, because I believe REEB can definitely, under Barbara's leadership, definitely make some inroads on that.
100%.
Thanks for that, Sudha. Does anyone have any final thoughts on that and the next year before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess for me, so kind of my observation would be that as an industry, they are making kind of visible strides in terms of recruiting people. So it's still slow, but that there is definitely visible improvement there. I guess I'd like to see a little bit more effort and attention on the retention side of it. So we know from the stats that PRCA and others do that people join and then they leave within a few years. So, the early career. So a little bit more focus on our early careers is kind of something that I would like to see.
Absolutely. Can I just follow up on that, Anne-Marie? And that
Sure.
is down to culture, and it's down to the process. It's down to what we highlight in our goals and our terms of reference. It's not only recruitment, it's what is the experience like for them, and that's the really difficult piece in it. But I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there. Lastly, all that remains is for me to say a big thank you, not to just for this session, but to all of you for all of your efforts over the past 12 months on behalf of the PRCA and indeed the industry. It's been really inspiring, and we're really grateful for all the effort that you've put in. For everyone else, if you'd like to learn more about REEB, please do look at the PRCA website. You can find it at www.prca.org.uk/REEB. You can learn about the mentoring program. You can download the Ethnicity Pay Gap Guide and find out how you can get involved as well. So we'd love to hear from you and hear your suggestions on what improvements can be made. So do feel free to get in touch. Okay, thanks very much, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.